Well, you probably didn't think you could learn lessons about relationships from a butcher shop, but you really can. That's how I grew up. My father was running a meat business for many, many years. My grandpa started it back in the 1940s, Hanson's Meat, Sharon, Pennsylvania. And watching my dad interact with people, I learned so much about how to deal with people, about relationships. But I really want you to hear this. Everything that my dad demonstrated, that he modeled, he learned from the Word of God because he had a deep personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And if you hear anything this morning, I want you to hear this. In dealing with people, if you want to have successful relationships, it all starts with your relationship with Jesus Christ, with your connection to Him. And we can't let the world define relationships. We really need to let Jesus define them, the Word of God define relationships. And when we do that, they're gonna go much better. Amen, church? Amen. Well, hey, I want to again welcome all of those that are joining us online. Last week, we gave a shout out to Greg. He was a guy that I met on an airplane headed to Cancun a couple weeks ago. And sure enough, he watched last week online. He wanted to thank you for welcoming him all the way from Pittsburgh. This morning, Greg is watching live now. He's watching live online right now. Joining us from Pittsburgh, it's the reach of technology. So, hey, church, why not? One more time for Greg. Greg, let's put our hands together for Greg from Pittsburgh. We're glad that you're with us. And everyone else that is joining us online as well. So last night was date night. This is a picture of me and my wife. We've been married for 26 years. I want you to hear this, though, that this series about relationships isn't just about marriage. You can apply these principles across the board. But we had a great evening. One of the ladies that's been around the church for quite some time came up to our table and said, I'm so encouraged because everyone that cooked the meal, I think we had close to 20 people that were cooking and serving. They were all in their 20s or younger. And she said, I'm so encouraged by all the young people of our church and how they're serving. And it reminded me of a prophecy that was spoken over our church about a year and a half ago. A man came in and said that the young people are going to clothe the older people with their zeal. And when she said that last night, it brought my mind back to the prophecy that was spoken because God is really raising up the 20-somethings in our church and all of the young people, and how encouraged she was to see that, and it's happening. It's happening in our church, and so I praise the Lord. Now, they did break quite a few dishes in the kitchen last night. There was a lot of crashing going on last night, but we might have to buy some new dishes, but it was all good. It was all good. So dealing with difficult people. So it's a difficult sermon to preach because, we're dealing with difficult people. I really think respect is huge. I think we're seeing a lot of disrespect in our society today. I think a lot of disrespect in relationships. And when you respect someone, you are valuing them. So I always kind of compare it to it's like a currency. You show respect, you value. It's like handing someone a 20, a 50, 100. You're telling that person, wow, you mean something to me. You're valuable to me. And so just the opposite of that, disrespect, when you disrespect someone, you're communicating to them in whatever way that they're not valuable to you. It's like reaching into their wallet or their purse and taking a 20 or a 50 or 100, and it never feels good. If you think about your relationships, when you don't feel good about it, I'm pretty sure they've disrespected you in some way. They have not valued you. But when you're having a great friendship, a business relationship, a marriage, whatever it may be, when they're continually valuing you and giving that to you, well, you feel really good about it. It happens in churches, happens in small groups, happens in everything. And so I think respect is a huge thing, and it's something that I'm gonna share more with you today. So the way we're gonna tackle this, we're gonna talk about 3 ways to live, and we're gonna get these 3 ways to live from a story in the Old Testament. 1 Samuel chapter 25, so if you wanna open up your Bibles, you can open up 1 Samuel 25, or if you wanna jump on our app, that's where we're gonna be. Gonna share with you 3 ways to live, and then you're gonna get to choose, walking out of here today, you're gonna see the results of those 3 ways, and then you're gonna get to make a choice how you're gonna deal with difficult people this week, because they're not going away. The difficult people are not going away. You're gonna run into them, and it might be you that you're dealing with as well, because you can be difficult. But before we jump into the scripture, again, if you go to our app, Canton Nazarene Connect, I want to make you aware of a couple things that we have for you this week to help you out. Number one is a Bible reading plan. So if you go to the bottom of the app and you click Bible, and then you click the word plan, you'll have a verse every day will be sent to you about respect. So that'll help you on your journey this week. And then again, if you go back to the home page and you click in the upper left-hand corner, and then you go to settings, and then you go to notifications. If you turn the one on that says relationships, you're gonna get a daily challenge every day this week that has to do with respect. That'll help you practice respect with difficult people. So again, go to settings, turn that notification on for relationships. It's actually already there, so you'll get that for today, the verse for the day, the challenge for today. But every day this week, if you do that, it'll help you out. We actually received some encouragement this last week because it happened with patients, and some people said, wow, that's really helping me in my spiritual journey and my spiritual walk. So, jump into that. Don't just, do Sunday, do every day of the week, and I think it'll really help you. So 3 ways to live. The first one is to live in a way that we exchange evil for good. And so we're gonna see this in this story. Again, 1 Samuel 25, starting in verse 1. Then David moved down to the wilderness of Maon. There was a wealthy man from Maon who owned property near the town of Carmel. So this is a historical story. This really happened. We're introduced to the first character in this story. His name is David. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, this very wealthy man. We may look at that and say, sheep and goats. This would be like having your garage full of, Corvettes, sports cars, having this huge house. This guy was very, very wealthy. They counted wealth in sheep and goats back in the day. So 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats, and it was sheep shearing time. So this was gonna be a very profitable time. This was when Nabal was gonna cash in. So this man's name was Nabal. Here's the second character in the story. And then the third, his wife was Abigail. His wife was very sensible. We'll see more about this later. And she was a beautiful woman as well. So David, Nabal, and Abigail. But Nabal, a descendant of Caleb, was crude and mean in all of his dealings. So we get a little more detail about Nabal. He was mean and he was crude in all of his dealings. And so this Nabal, we're gonna see that he receives good, but he returns evil for that. And I think that's really what makes someone difficult. So as we continue to read, when David heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep, he sent 10 of his young men to Carmel with his message for Nabal: peace and prosperity to you, your family, and everything you own. So what you need to know about David at this point, David was a young man. He had defeated Goliath in this battle with a slingshot and some rocks, and he had kind of grown famous from that. There was a lot of respect, value attributed to him, and so the king at that time, King Saul, because all the people were raving about David, he felt devalued, disrespected, and so Saul didn't like David, so Saul was after David, trying to kill David because he was jealous of David. So David right now, again, he's kind of on the move. He has these 600 fighting men with him, but he's on the run. He's kind of in this place of wandering, He's not a boy anymore. He's not king yet. He would be king one day, but he's just out in the wilderness with these men. And so he sends this message to Nabal. I'm told that it is sheep shearing time. While your shepherds stayed among us near Carmel, we never harmed them and nothing was ever stolen from them. So David and his men, ask your own men and they will tell you this is true. So would you be kind to us, all right? Would you be kind, since we have come at a time of celebration? Please share any provisions you might have on hand with us and with your friend David. And David's young men gave this message to Nabal in David's name, and they waited for a reply. So I think it's a reasonable request, right? David and his fighting men are out in the wilderness. They're protecting the shepherds, protecting the sheep. They're helping Nabal get richer, however you want to say it, because, no sheep are lost, and so there's going to be a lot of profit. So, hey, just give my men some food, some water, give me some provisions. So how does Nabal respond to this? Well, as we continue in the story, this is how he responds. Who is this fellow David? So it's like, well, who is this fellow David? Nabal sneered. Don't you love that word, sneered? You don't hear that word very often, sneered to the young men. Who does this son of Jesse think he is? There are lots of servants these days who run away from their master. So it's obvious that Nabal knows a little bit of the history with David. He knows that he's on the run from Saul. So he makes that statement. Should I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've slaughtered for my shears and give it to a band of outlaws who come from who knows where? So he knows that David, right, has some outlaws with him. He calls them, 600 fighting men. And he's like, should I give this to them? Who knows where they came from? So David's young men returned and told him what Nabal had said. And so the takeaway, if this is how we decide to live like Nabal and return evil for good, well, evil for good always equals difficult. I mean, that's kind of the definition of a difficult person. We are good to them, and in return, we get evil. For example, you may have been really good to your kids. You've raised your kids. You've sacrificed for your kids. I mean, you love them so much. They have no idea what you've done for them. But in return, what do? They cop an attitude with you, right? They lie to you. Maybe they steal from you or what have you. Maybe they rebel against you. And you're like, wait a second. You have no idea. I've been so good to you and you're going to return evil to me? Maybe it's in a marriage relationship. You've been really good to your spouse. You've been faithful to them. You've loved them. You've cared for them. You've supported them. And you're not getting the same thing in return. In fact, maybe they've not been faithful to you. Maybe they've cheated on you. You're like, I was so good, and now you're going to return evil to me? Maybe you work for a company and you've given everything you have for this company. You show up on time, you work hard, you've gone the extra mile, right? I mean, you've done everything good for this company, and what do they return to you? They could really care less about you. You're just another number. You get evil for the good. Maybe you're managing people and you're like, you do everything you can for your employees. I mean, you give them bonuses, you treat them with respect and dignity, and how do they treat you? They're ungrateful. They're not thankful for all that you've done as a manager, as a leader. And you're like, these people are so difficult. Why are they so difficult? Well, it's because they're returning evil for your good. They're disrespecting you. They are devaluing you instead of respecting you and adding value to your life. And if we choose to live this way, evil for good, it always equals difficult. And before we're too hard on the other people, we really have to look in the mirror, because if we were all honest this morning, couldn't we say that we've all been difficult at times? That we've received a lot of good from some people, and in return, we've been evil? I was tested this week. We're on date night. It's Thursday night, and we get a call from my son. The water's been shut off at our house. I tried to wash my hands and there's no water. Did Dad pay the water bill? And so we had gotten a notification from the city of Louisville that our water would be shut off on February the 15th because I missed a payment in January. Now, hear this. I have lived in Louisville for 20 years. I've paid my bills faithfully. Louisville went from billing every other month to billing every month, just starting this year. So I miss one payment. I get this notification that my water's gonna get shut off on the 15th. So I make the payment on the 11th. I have proof that on the 11th, the money came out of my bank to pay the water bill. I get another bill that says it's due on the 20th. I think I'm in good shape, but we get this call from my son. The water's been shut off at our house. I can't wash my hands. And then you don't realize how much you need water, because you get home and you realize you gotta go to the bathroom and you gotta flush the toilet, and the toilet doesn't fill back up, and you gotta brush your teeth, and you gotta take a shower, and the dogs need water, and the clothes need washed, and all of these things. And so I felt this great, evil for all the good that I've done over the years. I've been faithful to the city of Louisville. I've treated the city so well. I've done what I needed to do. And I miss 1 month because they changed the billing, by the way. And now they're gonna shut my water off? I was really upset. I was angry. Then I come to find out they dug a big hole in my yard. I'm a yard guy. I care about my yard. How they shut my water off? They dug a huge hole in my front yard, turned it off, and when they put the dirt back, they didn't even put it back right, to add insult onto injury. I think the city, they're being so difficult. So I went down and I talked to the city manager, and I had to really practice what I'm preaching this morning. You'd be proud of me as your pastor. I did good. But evil for good equals difficult. Now, there's really three levels of difficult, and I want to say this before we go any further. And I think there's level one people, level one difficult people, and they're just irritating. They might be a little too sarcastic, maybe a little insensitive, maybe just immature. They just get on our nerves, and they're irritating. We're not really talking about them today. I think with those folks, just practice patience, what we talked about last week. Don't be easily offended by these people. Just have a little patience and move on. And then there's level three people that they're really difficult. I mean, these people are illegal. Again, at my dad's store, he had people steal from them. And he would say to these folks, listen, you're either going to jail, I'm gonna report you to the police, or you're gonna leave this business. There's some people that they need reported to the police. It's illegal. They're maybe abusive in a physical way, a sexual way, emotional way, whatever way it is, but they're doing illegal things. They need reported. We're not talking about those people this morning. What we're talking about is the level two difficult people. The people that are they're mean. They're mean. They've been dishonest with you. Maybe they've criticized you publicly. They've done something that has hurt you. And because they've hurt you, you want to hurt them back. Because they've been mean to you, you want to be mean back to them. And it's really the second way that we can live. It's evil for evil. I mean, we learned this on the playground. If you don't learn this in middle school, you didn't learn the main lesson in middle school. You got to stand up for yourself on the playground because nice guys finish last. If someone comes and punches you in the nose, you better punch them back. If they cuss you out, you better cuss them out. If they say something about your friend, you better say something about their friend. If they're going to do anything to you, you better get them back. Pay evil for evil. I mean, that's how the world works because nice guys finish last. And it's really what we want to do. I mean, when the city of Louisville disrespected me, I'm telling you, I had some conversations. I wanted to go down there and tell them a thing or two. Because that's our nature, is to return evil for evil. That's the way to live. And that's what David wanted to do. I mean, we continue to read in the story in verse 13. This is what David's response says. Get your swords. Get your swords was David's reply as he strapped on his own. I could just picture it. Then 400 men started off with David. You're right there marching. And 200 remained back to guard their equipment. So David's like, get your swords on, boys. And we love this. Let's face it, every movie we watch, when something has been done wrong to the good guy, it's like payback time. It is time. I mean, it's the lesson of every Fast and Furious. What? Fast and Furious 9, all right? When the good guys get hurt, it's time for payback. Let's put our swords on. We love this part of the movie. We cheer for this. We eat our popcorn and drink our Cokes. And I mean, this is what really gets our attention. Let's get some vengeance. Let's get some payback. Get your swords. Get your swords. And that's why this message is so important. It's why this message is so important. Because if we go there, it never makes life better. It never makes the relationship better. In fact, it makes life worse. It makes the relationship worse. In fact, when we repay evil for evil, we start becoming more and more like the difficult person that we're dealing with. And that difficult person, when we return evil for evil, they start taking control over our emotions. They start taking control over our lives. And we start becoming someone that we're not. And the bitterness grows in our hearts. And things happen that we regret. It's not the way to go. And that's why this message is so important for us to hear this morning in dealing with difficult people. Well, let's keep on reading. Meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants went to Abigail and told her, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, but he screamed insults at them. These men have been very good to us, and we never suffered any harm from them. Nothing was stolen from us the whole time they were with us. In fact, day and night, they were like a wall of protection to us and the sheep. So these servants are like, yeah, David and his men, they did all this. They were great guys. You need to know this and figure out what to do, Abigail, for there is going to be trouble for our master and his whole family. He's so ill-tempered, talking about Nabal now, that no one can even talk to him. And Abigail, she wasted no time, we're told. She quickly gathered 200 loaves of bread and 2 wineskins full of wine, 5 sheep that had been slaughtered, nearly a bushel of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 fig cakes. I mean, she had it all, desserts, the whole 9 yards. She packed them on the donkeys and said to her servants, go on ahead. I will follow you shortly. But she didn't tell her husband Nabal what she was doing. as she was riding her donkey into a mountain ravine. She saw David and his men coming toward her in this ravine, right? And David had just been saying to himself, this is what he's saying in his mind, a lot of good it did to help this fellow. We protected his flocks in the wilderness, and nothing he owned was lost or stolen, but he has repaid me evil for good. May God strike me and kill me if even one man of his household is still alive tomorrow morning. Evil for evil will always equal regrets. So here's David. He's having this mental conversation with himself. This guy, he's so mean, he's so wicked. I'm gonna get him back. And we've all done this when we've dealt with difficult people. We have these imaginary conversations. I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna get them back. I am gonna repay evil for evil. But it always equals regrets. It always equals regrets. You know, we had a situation in our family not too long ago where someone was really offensive to one of our family members, someone that we love dearly. And it hurt us as parents very much because this person shouldn't have been treated the way they were treated in our family. And I'm telling you, I had these conversations in my mind. I thought about doing some things that I would have really, really regretted that could have gotten me fired from being a pastor. I'm just being real honest with you. But there was so much anger stirred up in me over this situation. And I remember my father-in-law, John, coming to me because he could tell that I was worked up. And he said, Dan, he said, guard your heart. Guard your heart. Don't let the bitterness get in. Don't let what this person did to this person that you love make you become someone that you're not, because you're not that person. Guard your heart, Dan. And it was some of the best advice that I've received, because trust me, this situation isn't over. And there's been some times where I begin to think things again. And I go back to what John told me. Dan, guard your heart. Don't return evil for evil. Listen, everyone, we're gonna get angry. We're gonna have thoughts. We're gonna have these mental conversations like David did. We're gonna want to do this, but you need to guard your heart, because evil for evil always leads to regrets. Because if we go forward and say that thing or do that thing or take vengeance, again, it never makes us better, never makes the situation better. In fact, we become more and more like that difficult person that we're dealing with. And so the only answer is a third option. The only answer, the only way to live that is the fix to dealing with difficult people is this right here. To live in a way that we return good for evil. It's the only thing that'll break the cycle. If you're in this cycle, this is the only thing that will break it. It's the only thing that will break evil for good or evil for evil. This is the only way to live, good for evil. And so as we continue to read, when Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed low before him. She fell at his feet and said, "Oh, I accept all blame in this matter, even though she wasn't guilty, my Lord. Please listen to what I have to say. I know Nabal is a wicked and ill-tempered man. Please don't pay any attention to him. He's a fool, just as his name suggests. But I never even saw the young men you sent." She says, I wasn't there. I didn't see these young men that you sent. I heard about this. Now, my Lord, as surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, since the Lord has kept you from murdering and taking vengeance into your own hands. This is a smart lady right here, because David's like, wait a second, the Lord hasn't kept me from doing this. In fact, I was just talking to the Lord about this. I'm on my way to do this. But she started speaking to David as if he was better than he really was. And so, ladies, this works on guys. Even if we know that you are doing it to us, it still works. If you want to get your way, ladies, just start talking to us as if we're better than we really are, okay? She starts doing this. She starts saying, hey, the Lord has kept you from murdering and taking vengeance into your own hands. Let all your enemies and those who try to harm you be as cursed as Nabal is. And here is a present that I, your servant, have brought to you and your young men. Please forgive me if I have offended you in any way. The Lord will surely reward you with a lasting dynasty, for you are fighting the Lord's battles. And you have not done wrong throughout your entire life. Even when you are chased by those who seek to kill you, your life is safe in the care of the Lord your God. So she knew King Saul was after him. She knew his story as well. Secure in his treasure pouch. I love that. But the lives of your enemies will disappear like stones shot from a sling. Again, she heard the story about his battle with Goliath in that sling. When the Lord has done all he promised and has made you leader of Israel, don't let this be a what? A blemish on your record. Don't follow through. Don't do what you're thinking. It will be a blemish on your record. Don't do it. Then your conscience won't have to bear the staggering burden of needless bloodshed and vengeance. Oh, there's a price to pay for evil for evil. And when the Lord has done these great things for you, please remember me, your servant. And David replied to Abigail, praise the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you to meet me today. Thank God for your good sense, not mine, but your good sense. Bless you for keeping me from murder and from carrying out vengeance with my own hands. For I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, who has kept me from hurting you, that if you had not hurried out to meet me, not one of Nabal's men would still be alive tomorrow morning. And then David accepted her present and told her, return home in peace. I have heard what you said. We will not kill your husband. And here it is. David returns good for evil. And now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking what I was thinking when I read this. This isn't how it really works in life. I mean, if there is some beautiful woman, some wise woman that knelt before me and apologized for that difficult person and brought me gifts and all of these things, well, it would be easy to return good for evil. But that's not how it works. I mean, when there's a difficult person in your life, I mean, rarely does someone from their family or their sphere of influence come to you and bow down before you and apologize and give you gifts and all these. I mean, it was easy for David to return good for evil. I mean, if you're a woman and someone's wronged you and there's some handsome man that came and wise man and he bowed before you and apologized and brought you gifts and said, oh, please forgive this difficult person that's in my family. I mean, they're a fool. Yeah, it'd be easy for you to say, hey, okay, I'll back off. I won't return evil for evil. We'll do good for evil. You know, you apologize. But this is not how the real world works. I mean, the difficult people in our lives, they're difficult and they don't come and apologize or someone from their family. So this isn't even realistic. And Jesus, I think he'd agree. Jesus knew this story. I mean, Jesus knew the history of David. I mean, he read this. He knew all about this. And I think Jesus would agree with us because he teaches something in a sermon to people that are struggling with difficult people. And he makes it much more realistic. He brings it into a place, I think, that we are in today. Like how it really is. Because that kind of seems, although it's historically true, like a bit of a fairy tale story. And he introduces this in Luke 6:32 by raising some questions. In dealing with difficult people, he asks this question: if you love only those who love you, why should you get credit for that? Even sinners love those who love them. And as I was getting ready for this week, I thought, well, if I, as a follower of Jesus, don't do very well at dealing with difficult people, how can we expect people that don't follow Jesus to deal well with difficult people? In other words, if followers of Jesus, and that's what we are, if that's what we're trying to do, if we're not any different than the world, I think that's what Jesus is getting at. I mean, you're not going to get any credit if you love only those who love you. I mean, even sinners love those who love them. Okay, Jesus, good question. You got me thinking. Then he asks another question. And if you do good only to those who do good to you, why should you get credit? I mean, if you're only doing good to people that do good for you, Jesus says, why should you get any credit? Even sinners do that much. Well, that's a tough question, Jesus. Now you got me thinking. Maybe I am supposed to act a little differently. Maybe I am supposed to live a little differently. Okay. And then he asks another question. This is a whopper of a question. And if you lend money only to those who can repay you, why should you get credit? Even sinners will lend to other sinners for full. Okay, now Jesus, you're getting into my pocketbook. You're getting personal. You know, difficult person in your family. They're asking you for money. You've lent money to that difficult person in your family. Jesus is like, well, you know, if they're good in your family, it's pretty easy to lend them money. But if they can't repay you, you know. So now we're really thinking, what are you getting at, Jesus? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say here? And this is what he says right after this. This is the point that he's getting to. You need to love your enemies, he says. Do good to them. Lend to them without expecting to be repaid. Love your enemies, do good to them, lend to them without expecting to be repaid. And again, Jesus introduces this way to live. Jesus says this is the only way you're gonna deal with difficult people. You need to return good for evil. You need to return good for evil. You have a difficult professor. You have a difficult friend, a difficult family member, a difficult coworker, a difficult employee. They're just mean. They're not nice. They've hurt you in some way. Jesus would say, you know how you deal with them? Good for their evil. Well, what's that look like, Dan? Well, in Jesus' life, this is what it looked like. Sometimes it looked like walking away. Jesus walked away sometimes. In Luke chapter 4, 29 to 30, there was this group that was being very difficult with Jesus. They intended to push him over the cliff. I mean, that's getting pretty difficult, right? But he passed right through the crowd and he went on his way. There were some times when Jesus was facing difficult people that he just walked away. He got out of there. And that's what you're gonna have to do sometimes. Sometimes dealing with difficult people, returning good for evil means you just walk away. You walk away. You don't do what you feel like doing, you walk away. Sometimes it looks like correcting. So you're saying, Pastor Dan, I should be a doormat? No, don't just be a doormat. Jesus isn't calling you just to be walked over all the time. I mean, Jesus corrected some difficult people. Matthew 18:7 in the Word of God, woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble, such things must come. But woe to the person, he's correcting, woe to the person through whom they come. So Jesus says, hey, there's gonna be some difficult things that come in this world that cause people to stumble. If it's coming through you, woe to you. I'm correcting you, you difficult person. He does this over and over again. Sometimes difficult people, they need corrected. Sometimes it looks like enduring heartache. Enduring heartache. Matthew 8:20, we're told, Jesus replied, foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Jesus lived a lonely life. He received criticism from his family, from people that he loved, cared for, people that didn't like him. He said, listen, the birds have nests, foxes have dens. I don't even have a place to lay my head. He just endured hardship. And sometimes in dealing with difficult people, it's just a test of endurance. We just have to kind of endure. Sometimes it's praying and forgiving. Oh, time out, Pastor. You mean to tell me that difficult person in my life, I got to pray for them? I got to forgive them? Yes, that's what Jesus would say. He did it. Jesus did this. Luke 23:34. There Jesus is. He's hanging on the cross. I mean, dealing with some very mean people that crucified him. And here's what Jesus says. He says a prayer. Father, forgive them. A prayer and forgiveness, all in one. Father, he says, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. So that difficult person in your life, you mean to pray for them? Yes, pray for that difficult person. Forgive, yes, forgive that difficult person. And how did these difficult people respond? And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. So I'm not even telling you that if you pray for them, if you forgive them, that they're gonna come and say, oh, thank you for praying and forgive me. Oh, I love you. No, very likely they'll just cast lots for your clothes. They won't change at all. You know what'll happen? You will change. You will change. And Jesus goes on. He says, if you do this, if you would return good for evil, then your reward from heaven will be very great, and you will truly be acting as children of the Most High. So Jesus says, listen, this earth, this isn't all there is. There's an eternity, and your reward's gonna be great in heaven if you would live this way with difficult people. Why? For God is kind, he says. God is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. And we've been all unthankful. We have all been wicked, but yet God has been good to us. God has been kind to us. So you ask, well, why would I be good to someone that's been evil to me? Because God has been good to you. Because God has been kind to you. Even when you've been evil towards him, he's been so kind. You must be compassionate just as your Father is compassionate. Good for evil always equals respect. You know, when I watched my dad deal with these mean people that would come into the store, and most of them were nice people, but there were some really mean people that came in. And when my dad returned good for evil, he didn't do evil for evil. I had so much respect for my dad. And that's what happens when we live this way. When we make this choice to live this way, when you return good for evil, people will watch your life and they will respect you because they know that you are doing something that is not normal. It's not predictable. In fact, it's absolutely remarkable. You're being like God. You're being compassionate when you don't need to be. You're being kind even when it's not deserved. You're being like your Heavenly Father. And that's why that equals respect. It equals respect. So there's three ways to live. There's three ways to live because the difficult people aren't going away, everybody. It can be evil for good, it can be evil for evil, or it can be good for evil. Which one are you going to choose? The difficult person that's going to be in your life this week, the interaction that you're going to have this week, which one are you going to pick? Are you going to be the difficult person and evil for good? Are you going to respond evil for evil? Or are you going to be remarkable? Are you going to be different? Are you going to be like Jesus? Are you going to follow his teachings? And are you going to return good for evil? You know, there was a man that would hang out at the butcher shop. I'm gonna wrap up with this story. His name was Clint Dixon. He's passed away a couple years ago. But as a young boy, you know, I didn't know why Clint was hanging out at the butcher shop. He was just a nice old man, you know, enjoyed hanging out with him. But when I was mature enough to hear his story, my dad told me the story of Clint Dixon. Clint Dixon was a faithful church member. He loved the church, loved the Lord. There was a pastor that came to pastor the church he was a part of. And this pastor was very charismatic. He just grew this church very rapidly, very quickly. Everyone loved this pastor. Well, what Clint didn't know was there was a dark side to this pastor. There's a very dark side to this man. This pastor began to seduce his wife and ultimately had an affair with Clint's wife. Clint didn't know this was going on. Later on, this pastor seduced Clint's grown daughter and had an affair with Clint's daughter. He took both Clint's wife and his grown daughter. Didn't know this was happening. During this time, this pastor also asked Clint for money to borrow thousands of dollars. Clint was such a good man. He loaned thousands of dollars to this pastor. Never got it back, by the way. When all this came to light, Clint was crushed. He was devastated. I mean, if there was ever a man that had the right to return evil for evil, it was Clint. But you know what Clint did? He followed the words of Jesus. He returned good for evil. He kept loving the Lord. He kept loving his church, never left his church. Was faithful to his church, faithful to his Lord to the day he died. He lost his marriage. Obviously, the relationship, with his daughter was strained. Never got the money back that he'd loaned this pastor. I mean, if there was ever a man that had the right to get bitter and angry, walk away from God, the church, the whole 9 yards, it was Clint. And my dad said, every time Clint was in the butcher shop, he would just look at him and had so much respect for Clint because of how he responded to evil. He didn't respond with evil, he responded with goodness. He forgave that pastor. He didn't let that pastor take control over his emotions. He didn't let that pastor take control over his future. He didn't let that pastor take control over his relationship with his Lord. No, he forgave him. He moved on. There were consequences, obviously, from all of that sin. But Clint was a living example of what Jesus just spoke and shared with us this morning. When I read that passage, I'm like, wow, this is Clint Dixon. It really is possible. Clint was not predictable. Clint was remarkable. He lived a different way. That's what Jesus calls us to in relationships. After I heard that story, until this very day, when I think of Clint, I have so much respect for that man. Amazing, amazing. And so this morning, are you here today and there's sin in your life? There's sin in your heart? There's distance between you and Jesus? There's some things that aren't right? If we're ever gonna live the way Jesus is calling us to live, that has to be removed. If we're gonna return good for evil, that sin has to be done with. So I want to give you an opportunity this morning. Those of you watching online, there's wrong, there's sin in your heart. I want to lead you through a prayer right now if you'd bow your heads. Father, we confess our sin to you right now. God, there is sin in our hearts. There are things that aren't right between us and you. And we ask you, Jesus, to forgive us of our sins, to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Jesus, you died for our sin. You paid the price for our sin. We are sorry for the distance between us and our Father because of the sin. Please forgive us and cleanse us. If we ever have hope, Jesus, of following your teaching, of returning good for evil when it comes to dealing with the difficult people in our lives, the mean people, the people that have hurt us, the people that have been dishonest with us, the people that have betrayed us, the people that have treated our loved ones with cruelty and hatred, the people that are so difficult. They're just so difficult. When we think about them, we start getting angry. Oh, if we ever have hope to deal with them in this way, oh God, we need to get rid of the sin in our lives. Please forgive us. Please forgive us, Lord. Please forgive us. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen. I want to invite you to stand if you can this morning. I want to pray one more prayer. We're going to sing this final song. It's really the theme song for this series. It's a prayer really over you. It's a powerful prayer over you. And so I pray that you would sing this and receive this as a prayer and a blessing. That Father God, I pray this morning that you would help us in dealing with difficult people to return good for the evil. I ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Thanks for watching. If this message helped you, share it with someone you know. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you live in the area, we invite you to join us for one of our worship experiences. Go to cantonnazarene.com for times and more information. Hey, thanks for being a part of our virtual community.